So no surprises there, really, that I burnt out, especially considering that we've got some major gaps in our training, which I'll definitely get touch on later.
Welcome back to the Ignition Path podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Goodknight, and I can't wait to show you and tell you all about my guest today, Jeanelle Classen, who is from Australia, so it's late for her, early for me. We're doing everything on the 12-hour back and forth, so it's either 5 at night for me and 5 in the morning for her or what have you, so it's fun to have her on. She is a nurse down under, if you will, and, I'd like to have her come on and tell you her story. But before that, don't forget to like, subscribe, share. If you hear something in this message as we talk today, don't hesitate to share this out with those people that you feel may need it. So, Jeanelle, welcome to the Ignition Path podcast. How are you today?
Hello. Thank you for having me. And I am ready for bed soon, but I am excited to be here.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And that lump on her chest isn't a growth. It's a human. So
baby human.
A little baby human.
We'll probably be making some noise as we go along, but there we go.
Hey, us in the medical field, we keep that real. So, as you know from our first conversation, we're both in the medical field. We have a common goal to help our colleagues and anybody in our field to help cope with all the stuff that we see and do and the time away from family and all that stuff. So That's actually why I had you on the Ignition Path, because you've kind of done what I've done on the nursing side of things. I did it on the EMS first responder side of things. I've created a course that, that will help, understand, help the new paramedic, the new firefighter, the new police officer, what they're going to be dealing with throughout their career. You're pretty young in your career. From what I remember, you've only been a nurse for a couple years, right?
About 4 or 5 years now.
Yeah. So yeah, tell us your story. Tell us about how you came about with, just even start from before you were into nursing. Was it something you started right after high school or right through college or what have you?
So I, growing up, I wanted to be a cardiothoracic surgeon.
Okay.
Yeah. Very, very quickly changed my mind when I realized you have to study for 18 years.
Yeah.
Just going like, I would love a family one day and a life. So I quickly moved on from that and went down I was always kind of medically interested, went down the veterinary pathway, and I was like, actually, I want my patients to talk back to me.
Okay.
And then I was like, maybe I should be a doctor. And I was like, nah, again, that's too much study, and I want to actually be in the nitty gritty of my patients. And then I was like, how about paramedicine? Every paramedic that I talked to, they said, go into nursing first so that you know what happens to the patient when they get dropped off at the hospital. I was like, Sure, right, I'll do that. Then I fell in love with nursing and stayed in it. So that's kind of what happened there.
Well, that's weird that's weird that your paramedic people said to go into nursing first, because typically paramedicine is a step lower in pay. So it's usually like, okay, I don't want to be a nurse first and then step down to paramedic, even though we shouldn't be lower in pay. But, we have to be in our career for a long time to start equaling what nurses make. But yeah, either way, I was a respiratory therapist before I became a paramedic, and knowing that side of things on the hospital side, level 1 trauma center, ICU, critical care, made a huge difference in how I care for my patients and the training that I do for my patients. When I first came on the scene, they were still intubating through the nose. And I'm like, no, I don't like that, because it just shoves all that goo back into your lungs and we have pneumonia. So I was never an advocate for doing it unless there was trauma-wise why you would still use the nose or what have you. But people used to do it in our career instead of CPAP because CPAP wasn't around. And it just, I would just see patients that would come in with that nasal intubation and they'd be in the ICU for 4 weeks, all because of pneumonia. And it's like you just shoved everything that's in here that's nasty and dirty right down into the best growing facility in the world in your lungs. Yeah. And so I was always an advocate of non-nasal intubation, and CPAP came onto the scene right about when I became a paramedic, and we started, it's been a little bit of a paradigm shift, but knowing that backside of it, I do things differently on the front end with my patients inside inside their house, inside my truck, that I'm glad I have that background. So if you ever do want to become a paramedic, flight nurse or whatever, because a lot of times flight nurses, at least here in the States, they want the flight nurses to be also paramedics as well, even though they're nurses. But
Yeah.
But yeah, you never know if you come back to the low ground if you want. No.
I don't know how the pay compares in Australia,
Oh, in Australia, yeah, I'm not sure.
but
I mean,
I
you can
still,
get some. Yeah, you can get some jobs that are paramedic, like on a helicopter and stuff, where you're making as much as a nurse in a hospital. But it all fluctuates. You know what I mean? So, but so when you got into nursing, so you got out of nursing, so you went to school, did nursing, got out of nursing. Tell us a story about share with me and the audience here about your first year of nursing, because I think that's where the pivotal moment of what you're doing now really took off.
yeah, absolutely. So I burnt out within 6 months of graduating. So I graduated at the end of 2019. We all know that is leading into the year of death. So
March 13th of 2020, at least here in the States.
No surprises there, really, that I burnt out, especially considering that we've got some major gaps in our training, which I'll definitely get touch on later. But essentially, I was 6 months in. I was starting to see some deterioration and breakdown in my personal relationships. I was snapping at my family, friends, canceling social events, just not wanting to be anywhere but my bed. I was starting to emotionally eat, and my anxiety, depression was rising. I was, just overwhelmed by the tiniest thing at work. I just not sleeping. I can keep going. It was just everything, every aspect of my health, my well-being, mental, physical, emotional it was on the downward spiral. And I'm grateful that I picked it up, but I still didn't know what to do about it. So I approached my clinical nurse educator and I asked, so I'm seeing my colleagues who've been in this industry for 5+ years, and they're experiencing the same stuff that I am, except they're saying that it hasn't changed. Is there anything I can do to prevent this? And she turns around and says, get used to it. It's not going to change. Just suck it up.
Old school nurse, yeah. Suck it,
Yeah.
buttercup, right?
Yeah, it's like, okay, thanks.
Yeah, that wasn't helpful at all.
Thank you so much for that input. I am so glad I asked you.
Well, it's so hard for our industry, especially the first responders, and nurses too. They want to be the people that people rely on, and you ask for help, and they feel it's that internal, stupid voice inside your head or that fear inside of you that makes you say, I shouldn't be asking for help. I should be able to do this. And for you to speak up at such a young age, because I'm sure you were in your early 20s, so you're not even fully developed yet up here.
No.
You know what I mean? I mean, you're a female, so you're already more advanced than I ever was at 23 or whatever, what it was. But still, you're just, people in general, humans, are not really fully equipped for what they have to deal with when they're in their early 20s, and then they get thrown into this, and then you do decide to speak up, and you go to a mentor, and they tell you to go pound sand. I'm like, man, if my mentor, when I had my crash, if my mentor told me to go pound sand, I probably wouldn't be here right now.
Yeah.
I would have spiraled to the point of bad things. And, I wasn't at the time, but I couldn't have imagined if someone would have told me, just suck it up. This is what you signed up for, buddy. If that's what came about, I mean, that's what we have to change. That's what you and I are both trying to change. And I do have another podcast called the Elevate Podcast, and it is specifically for first responder mental health, healthcare mental health. And there's a little bit of a crossover here, and we're going to have you on the Elevate Podcast too. But ultimately, I wanted to bring you on this podcast first because you kind of did what I did. You came through nursing, had a problem, got stymied, and said, no, that is not the answer. Yeah. There's a better answer out there. Yeah. So tell me what happened after she told you that. Tell me about making the decision to do what you do and put that entrepreneurial cap on and decide to make something of it for not only for your fellow, healthcare workers, but for, possibly, sustaining yourself throughout the next, 20 years in your career.
Yeah, absolutely. After that wonderful conversation, I offered to I offered to create a quality.
I hope she's watching this.
No. I think she's retired now. But
okay.
Anyways, after I had the conversation with her, I offered to take action and do something about it. Right? I was like, how about we do an internal, quality improvement project? We identify what are our triggers and how can we improve it and put something into place. And she said, no, you're only new in the industry. Just leave it be. Now, you and I have had a good couple of chats now, and the more you get to know me, the more you'll realize I'm not just a let it goer. I'm a doer.
How do we even spell that? Let it go, or I can't wait for the transcript to come back on that.
Not even going to try.
A letter go,
By
or
the way, that is a copyrighted term. You're not allowed to use it anymore.
That's right. Yeah, exactly.
So I didn't let it lie. That's just not in my nature. I'm just not going to let this happen to me. No. I'm not about being helpless. Like, I wasn't going to let that helpless feeling become my identity of like, I'm just letting it happen to me. So that conversation, and then my experience of seeing other nurses still struggling with the same stuff many years into their career, I was just like, nah, that's not happening. By the way, I just didn't want to be a bitter nurse. That was my main motive to begin with. I didn't want to become a bitter nurse. I didn't want to fall out of love with something I had fallen in love with. And that's something that I was genuinely enjoying when the going was good,
Right.
And so that led me on a path of discovery. I went on a discovery pathway of coaching, training, books, you name it. Like, if it was a resource about improving my experience with burnout and with shift work and managing a healthy lifestyle in and out of work, I was onto it. But what I found was this major, major gap in the knowledge and the support that was tailored to the shift working person, and even more specific to that, nurses. It's always like super generic of make sure you meal prep or make sure you do that. And it's like, yeah, okay, meal prep is cool, but how? And it's like that's one simple example. Other things like how to unwind from a shift, how to deal with a patient passing away, how to process the trauma that you've experienced from either an intense met call or a patient or a family member abusing you. How do you deal with that? How do you deal with the high stress environment? We don't get taught that in our training. It's just like,
nope.
Documentation, and P.S. make sure you look after yourself. Documentation. It's just there's just no how to.
What is self-care?
What is self-care?
I'm not supposed to do stuff for myself. I'm a full professional.
Like, it's so ingrained in us that we have to just give. And it's just about becoming, and this is something that I started to label it, is we need to learn how to become healthily selfish. So what I started...
Selfish, okay.
Healthily selfish, yeah. So that's my made-up word again.
I think that's a great tagline. That's a great tagline.
Absolutely. And so, I started taking the bits and the pieces, because I found things for CEOs, I found things for homemakers, I found things for everything in between, really. And I just started to put together the things that was working. And as I was sharing with my colleagues, again, the experienced ones, they were like, hey, this is super simple and it's actually making a difference. Like, thank you. And I was like, yes, you're right. It is working because it's working for me. Like, I remember one time I was in an ICU environment, and we just lost a patient after a horrendous med call situation. It had been like a whole 24-hour period of just like med call, CPR, like she'd go kind of stable, but not. And then eventually she passed away. And I turned to my colleagues and I said, right, so when's our debrief? Because that was horrific. And they were like, oh, no, it's the end of the shift. We're behind and that's going to happen again. Deal. And if I didn't have the strategies that I have in place, I don't think I'd be nursing. Don't think I would be, because I was still a young nurse. I think I had been maybe 2.5 years in at that point. And if I hadn't had the strategies in place, no way I'd be here as a nurse. And so, yeah, that's when I decided, right, I need to write a book. I need to put the things that I'm doing, it needs to be in front of other people, so that, especially the young nurses and even the ones who have been in it for ages but don't know how to deal with what they have to deal with.
Right.
They need to do something.
That's my biggest goal, is to 20 years from now, it's part of our curriculum.
Yeah, that's my biggest goal.
I'd like it to be 5 years from now. I mean, I'd like it to be tomorrow, but we have to be a little bit realistic on time frame. But
yeah,
when it comes to, so what you developed was that, so you didn't find somebody else's thing or course and then just copy them. You kind of like, you dove into all these like different modalities, and then through your creativity and just who you are, you created your own thing, wrote a book, and then turned that book into the course that we are going to talk about here in a few minutes.
Yeah, pretty much. Okay. So there are some things that I still give credit to the original, like, thought,
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I definitely like the collation of things together. It was just something.
And the pattern, I know that's I'm in the middle of something right now where, he's like, listen, just follow the structure. You follow the structure and you'll come back on the other side in a different way. So, so that's the thing is how to take all the shells that have all the answers and put them in the right line to make sure that things are dealt with in the right way. So you have the knowledge of, like ACEs score, huge thing to know, something that all of us should know at the very beginning of our career. And I didn't find out about it until like almost a year ago now.
Yeah.
I've been saying 8 months, but then months go by. So it's been about a year since I learned about the ACEs score. And that was just a huge light bulb moment for me. Like everyone should know what that is. And then they should know their own ACEs score. So, because it's very, very, telling of how you're going to deal with stuff later on in life.
Yeah, absolutely.
So have you always had an entrepreneurial brain, or like, did you sell, lemonade on the sidewalk? I mean, or did you mow lawn? Like I started mowing lawns and just got into the thing like, hey, this is awesome. I can do stuff and make money. People pay me to shovel the lawn or to shovel the lawn. No, not that I haven't shoveled lawn. I have dogs that don't like to go out in the snow. So I have shoveled a lawn before, but not for money. I've mowed the lawns in the summer and shoveled the sidewalks and driveways in the winter when I was a kid. But I was an adult. I'm doing them both. I'm shoveling the lawn for my dogs and mowing the lawn for my dogs. It's all about my dogs. Yeah. So tell me how what did you do before? Like, did you always have that entrepreneurial, mindset, or is that just something that you learned through the process?
Yeah, no, I definitely, sorry, we'll just have to readjust here for a second. Yeah, so I definitely had a entrepreneurial mindset from the get-go. That's where I was born an entrepreneur.
Okay, cool.
So I'm originally from South Africa, and so I'd bake rusks and make biltong, and I'd be walking down the street selling that to my neighbors.
Hello, little one.
Bit uncomfortable, apparently.
Yeah.
Yeah, so sorry about that.
That's all right. We're real people, everybody. This is not going to be cut either. This is it. This is who you get. You get me, you get her. My dogs may come up here and jump on my back here in a minute too. So my kids are much older than that. If I tried to get my son to sit like that, he'd squash me.
Yeah, well, I mean, you gotta get it done, and finding the happy balance. Yeah, so like I've been entrepreneurial minded from the get go. I think I still have memories of drawing up my ideal, like I was going to live on a farm and I was going to do this and that like very entrepreneurial from the get go. And so I'm so passionate about it. It's now just about learning to go from being just a nurse and working in the business and learning how to work on the business and how to grow it. And that's why I'm seeking the help of people who know, people who've gone before.
Right. And that's so important. We have to realize, I struggled for a while when I started creating my course, and this is probably something you can speak on it once I share this, but, I felt like, I'm like, wait a second, I'm creating this is for the greater good of my people, of my industry, why, should I be making money at this? Should I be charging people? Like, this should be first of all, this should be common knowledge. I mean, this should be something we put into schooling, but on the other hand, it's like, I've intellectual property, my time, my expertise in all my training and my background, yes, people get paid to teach people. And I'm like, okay, so I had to wrap my head around that for a while. I had to talk to a few mentors. I had to talk to a few strangers that were like, I was struggling with, charging for a certain amount for my course and stuff like that. And in general, like not just an amount, but charging for stuff. And it's to the point where I see people, speaking at lectures, and of course they're getting paid. They're not going to be there unless they're getting paid, at least expenses, you know what I mean? So it's one of those things where it took me a while to get to the point where what I developed was beneficial, and it was beneficial to me and my background to charge for it. So did you struggle with that when you first started doing it?
Yes and no. I think because of my entrepreneurial mindset, I knew that I wanted to eventually in my lifetime, I don't know what, create something that would sustain me outside of just my job. But I've definitely struggled along the years with what to charge. And I've even recently in the last few years, when the going gets tough, sometimes I'm like, maybe I should just make it free. I just need to, I just want to help people and just give it to them, but then I'm like, they won't value it as much. And I'm like,
you got to have,
then they won't get it. It's like the constant internal battle.
Yeah, they won't do it. They won't finish it. Yeah, if they don't have skin in the game. And that does lead to the fact that, we do have, it's the background, the years I've been in the healthcare field, almost 30 years. That's worth something. My knowledge is worth something. And if I'm building a bridge that I can actually accelerate instead of 30 years, or I hit my wall at 20 years in, instead of learning what to do in crisis at year 20, or for you, month 6, because of the time frame that you came in. I mean, so many people left the industry during that time frame, but that accelerated everything by 100x. So COVID made everybody burn out. Just like overnight, and
100%.
And unfortunately, hopefully we're on the backside of that, and backside of it mentally, and learn from it as well. But what we've learned from it can benefit, and the things that we did to stay in the industry could benefit others, and there is value in that. So that's my philosophy. It was hard to come by that philosophy and get to that point. I did have to talk to a lot of people that were already doing this kind of thing, helping others with their knowledge and being in the industry. But it's so rewarding. Not only do you know that you're providing for yourself and your family, but you're also providing a good, valuable service that's accelerating the time frame of learning these things instead of having the downfalls.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's definitely been a learning curve, and it's only just maybe in the last year that I've started to be more comfortable with charging what I feel and know I'm worth, rather than kind of like, shiny thing syndrome. Or maybe I should just reduce the amount. Maybe I should increase it. Maybe I should, just like constantly like, maybe I should try this strategy, that strategy. And finally in the last year, I've started to kind of slow down a little bit and go, it's a good product. It just needs to get in front of the right people. Like, let's, it's just stay the course.
Yeah.
Pretty much exactly what you said. Just follow the system.
Exactly. And unfortunately, in our industry, my industry and your industry, not everybody's raising their hand for help. So you have to kind of get strategic and get the information out there to let people know that you have something to help. So when they do face that shift and they're like, oh my God, how am I supposed to deal with this? Oh, wait a second. I heard something on a podcast that someone's made a bridge. Someone's built a bridge to help me get there faster. Let me see what it's all about. So talk to me about, tell us all about your course and how people find you and it and all that stuff, and what it, whatever the basic, not going to give away all your secrets, or they wouldn't need to contact you, because I don't know if there's coaching involved or if it's just evergreen. Like, tell me more about your course and what it does.
Yeah, absolutely. So the course is based on the principles in my book. So the book's called Nursing the Nurse, the Ultimate 6-Step Guide to Beating Nurse Burnout. And, take out nurse and just insert your industry. It's generic, but it's specific, if you know what I mean. So it's generic in that every industry needs it, but I've written it for the nurse because that's who, I'm talking to me when I first started. And, so the course just builds on that and takes it to the next level, where you've got 8 weeks of access to it. And it's essentially just a walkthrough and then an in-depth conversation and community around that. I know exactly like what you just said before, many nurses or many healthcare professionals aren't raising their hand to get the help.
Right.
And I think it's because we don't like
raise your hands, people.
I know, right? We don't want to be...
Raise your hands before you even know you have a problem. Trust me.
It's like I was talking with someone earlier today, because I'm starting up my own podcast, as you know, and she was saying that, it's almost like people are expecting to burn out. They just assume it's part of the job, and it doesn't to be. And so that's exactly what we're trying to prevent in Nursing the Nurse. The Ultimate Walkthrough is what the course is called. So yeah, we've got weekly coaching there where we just come together as a bunch of nurses, and I call it like our little huddle, where we just check in with each other, and you can see what the person in week 6 versus the person in week 1 is going through, and just kind of share ideas and just build on the basic principles, the basic but vital principles that we talk about in the course. So yeah, I mean, we've also got access into my membership, which is called Nursing the Nurse, the Holistic Huddle, where I've collaborated with a physiotherapist, a nutritionist, and a mindset coach, where we create tailored support. It's almost like a gym membership in your pocket. Where nurses can just get that access and get that expert advice and support to improve their health and well-being. So yeah, it's such an awesome resource, and it's been so useful for those who've used it. It's now just a matter of getting it in front of people so we can start making a difference on a larger scale. And like you said, get it into our training from the get.
Education. Yeah. Exactly, because I think that's where it should start, and not start, that's ultimately where it needs to be. And then we still need to, have these open conversations. In my area, they use a word stigma, right? In this the mental health stigma, and now we've almost got a stigma for the word stigma. So I actually want to change it and say, let's just normalize mental health conversation in this industry. Just normalize it. Like, it's just normal to talk about it. Like, this isn't a big deal. Like, no, you're a tough person if you can face face the truth about the way you feel about stuff. Like, it's okay to be in touch with your feelings a little bit. You need to be tough in the moment, absolutely, and that's part of the training. But they don't train you for the backside of it on the aftermath, and that's where things need to change. And we can still train the old dog, right? The old dog can learn new tricks, and I'd rather the old dog learn new tricks before the old dog is facing down a barrel, because unfortunately in our industry, that's where it's headed. Yeah, 100%. And that's where it's, unfortunately, that's, the numbers are changing, they're going down, but it's because we're trying to normalize the conversation, and people like you and me are out there putting our problems that we've had out on the line, not letting anybody tell us that we're weak or anything like that. I've never been stronger in my life, except for the day that I raised my hand for help. Yeah. I know for a fact I was the strongest person that day, because if I wasn't, my family wouldn't have me right now.
Yeah.
And I was strong for me, my family, my coworkers, my community. I was strong because I raised my hand. Yeah. And I know you share that same feeling, because our conversations we've had. So, well, once again, now tell everybody where to find your stuff, how to get a hold of you. I'll put everything, of course, in the show notes, but go ahead and just do it verbally in case somebody doesn't have, they don't want to click on links. They want to write things down.
For sure. So, everything is accessible through my website, www.nursingthenurse.com. And basically you'll find there's a fantastic free training that goes on about the 3 biggest myths that nurses and healthcare workers believe about the industry. As one specific one that stands out is thinking that it's going to get better with time. It's not. Just because you've got more experience, so to speak, doesn't mean you know how to look after yourself. Like we said earlier, self-awareness leads to self-care. And, resilience is a choice. I want to add that just at the end is resilience is a choice, and choosing resilience every day doesn't mean it's going to be easier. It just means you got to choose it every day. Yeah. Just if you don't know where to look for help, or if you don't know what to do, look for help and look for someone who's done it before, so that you don't struggle for, in your case, 20 years. And
that's the weird thing. I didn't struggle at all until like the last 30 days of that time. I may have had a couple of dips, but I was never like I was that day, or that month, that I almost went a full 30 days to put me into PTSD, but major things happened in the same 30-day period that allowed me to have that crisis and say, wait a minute, I need help.
Yeah. And that's the thing, like you said, you just don't know when it's going to happen.
Right.
So you've got to have it in your pocket.
Well, and the best analogy that I've ever heard anybody say, I can't remember who I heard it from, but everybody's cup or everybody's pool, one drop at a time, will fill up eventually and overflow. And it doesn't matter, whatever your size of cup or vessel is, the things that happen to us mentally and struggles and emotionally, those are drops, Sometimes it's, like my incident was kind of a big pour. It wasn't really a drop. It was like a whoosh. But I had drops earlier. I had all these drops earlier that I didn't get help for, that I probably should have talked about or had the debriefing on, but never did. And then when the big one came, it was this gush, and it was like, oh, nope, I'm overflowing, So everybody has that vessel, that the problems and the things that we see and the things that we deal with. And we're not just talking about what we see or the deaths or stuff like that. We're also talking about time away from our family, our financial health. We're talking about, our not being able to do the fun stuff we used to do. Is it, we come home and we're exhausted and we can't even watch our favorite shows because we're just so done. We're so spent, because it's been such a hard day. Yeah. Sleep, deprivation, all that stuff. That's all drops. All of that stuff are drops. It's not about just what we see. And people need to understand that it's not about everything that we see in the industry. It's the whole life. Everybody in the world has the same problems, but then we have all these others from our industry that adds on to it. So it's this stair step, So, all right. Well, thank you so much, Jeanelle, for coming on the Ignition Path podcast and talking about your path to to get your course to people for help, don't hesitate to reach out to her, reach out to me. Her podcast is coming soon. We're talking about naming it now, so we don't know what the name of it is yet. I'll probably be helping her with her podcast, so that's the goal at least. And don't hesitate to send her a message, send me a message, like, share, subscribe. And if you've heard something during this conversation where somebody sticks out in your head and you need to share the podcast with them, hit that share button on your phone and send it right over to them. Jeanelle, anything else before we head out?
No, that's everything. Thank you so much. It's been awesome.
All right. Get some sleep, girl. I know it's late for you.
Thank you.
All right. Take care. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Ignition Path, fueling the entrepreneurial fire.